Hi, fellow music fans. Welcome back to Psychology of Rock. If you're new here, my name's Nina, and today we're going to be doing a lyrical and psychological analysis of the song Escapism, which appears as track number 6 on the Keep Me Fed album by my favorite ladies in rock, The Warning. And even though I did a Warning analysis a few weeks ago, I feel like so much has happened since then. It's just kind of been nonstop. They've had all these huge festivals and interviews and red carpets and photo shoots and magazines, and now they're back on tour. I have no idea how they are keeping up with everything, but they are definitely giving us a lot to consume and keeping us fed for sure. But let's talk about Escapism specifically. I absolutely love this track, and I feel like it's got a really different and kind of darker tone than the rest of the songs on the album, and the title gives us a pretty good clue what the song is about. Now, there's been several blurbs and interviews where the girls have been talking about the meaning and the inspiration for the track directly, but in the one I saw most recently, Ellie said that it was written through Zoom during the pandemic and that it's about escaping the reality that we were all living during that time, being locked up and not being able to do anything and feeling the need to escape through social media or other forms of entertainment. But as usual for The Warning, I think the actual song goes a lot deeper than that, and that it delves into some pretty profound psychological themes that I want to quickly touch upon before we start the lyrical breakdown, because I think they illustrate these concepts in a really accurate but also really relatable way. Just really effective songwriting that definitely pulls off what they wanted to convey. I also think that overall the song really transcends the particular moment in history that inspired it. I think the song really became something that goes much beyond that, and that it might even be more relevant now. So let's start with the psychological undertones, because I really do feel like they play a huge role in the song and that they are some of the driving forces behind its emotional impact, alongside, of course, the incredible composition itself and the impeccable delivery. And I've never heard anyone directly ask Pau, who I believe wrote these lyrics, if she's a fan of psychology, but I have to assume that she is, because she definitely comes across in her writing as having a pretty strong grasp of a lot of relevant concepts. But either way, I think the song really addresses at least 3 psychological mechanisms here, starting with the one that the song is named after, escapism. We can describe this as a defense mechanism characterized by a desire to withdraw from reality, often as a way to cope with stress, anxiety, or emotional pain. It involves seeking distractions or alternative realities to temporarily escape uncomfortable feelings or situations, including when we're feeling bored or unfulfilled, like during the pandemic. Now, escapism is not necessarily unhealthy, but it definitely starts to become problematic when it begins to turn into avoidance, which is the second psychological theme that we see in the song. And these two can seem kind of similar on the surface, but this one is really a lot more dangerous. Avoidance is a defense mechanism characterized by the tendency to evade situations, thoughts, or feelings entirely that we perceive as being threatening or anxiety-inducing. It's different than escapism because it involves actively seeking to avoid triggers or engaging in behaviors rather than temporarily trying to just reduce discomfort through distraction. Now, the third psychological mechanism that the song alludes to is dissociation, which I talk about at great length in my breakdown of The Wall by Pink Floyd that I will link down below. But in a nutshell, it's when we disconnect from our thoughts, feelings, memories, or even sense of self. It's a way of mentally distancing ourselves from a stressful or traumatic experience. But it can unfortunately have some pretty detrimental consequences. In fact, the prolonged use of any of these coping mechanisms can lead to mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and isolation. So some pretty heavy stuff here, but as usual for The Warning, I think they found a very artistic and very real way to convey all of this. So let's go ahead and go through the song together and see the different ways that they cleverly weave these psychological undertones into the song and some of the other themes that they might be trying to get at as well. And as always, I have to give the caveat that this is just my own personal analysis. I am in no way attempting to speak for the band. And of course, with any any work of art, there can be multiple valid meanings and interpretations, including whatever the song means to us personally. So with all of that being said, let's dive into Escapism.
So I close my eyes till it all fades. And so I close my eyes, then it all fades.
So the first verse begins with the lines, "Get me out of my head, drag me out of my bed, and make me move around to forget. There is time that needs to be wasted to feel something instead." So she's saying she wants to escape from her own thoughts and feelings because she's caught up in her internal world and just kind of laying around in her bedroom. And by she, I'm simply talking about the protagonist. I don't think it necessarily is supposed to be about Pau, Dany, or Ale. It could be, but since we don't know, we'll just stick with the protagonist. But she knows she needs to get out and actually do something to distract her from what she's thinking about, but she has no motivation. She tells herself that there's time that needs to be wasted. In other words, she has to find some kind of diversion because she knows if she doesn't, she's going to have to deal with her emotions, which she doesn't want to do. Now, the second part of the verse says, "I will dive in my own delusions, draping mirrors again, safe inside my own illusion." These are some of my favorite lines in the song. I love that she uses the word dive here because it shows that what she's doing is a conscious choice. She's not just passively drifting. She wants to deliberately enter a state of delusion and create her own distorted reality, which is a place that she says makes her feel safe. I think this is something that a lot of us can relate to, especially when we are in a difficult or overwhelming situation. We'd rather make up a new reality than face the one we're in. Again, not the healthiest approach, but I think we've all been there from time to time. And I have to single out the draping mirrors again line because I think it's not only really artistic, but it's an extremely powerful metaphor that I think could have a few different interpretations. I'll tell you what came to my mind, but I would also love to hear your thoughts in the comments because I have a feeling that there could also be some other meanings, and I love hearing what you guys have to say. But I think the obvious one here is that it's just another way of saying distorting reality. Mirrors symbolize reflection and self-perception, so by draping them, she might be suggesting that she is intentionally creating a warped or deceptive image of herself or her surroundings so that she can continue on with her delusion. I think the line could also imply that she's trying to construct a false or idealized version of herself or a persona that she can hide behind. I also think it's important to note the use of the phrase again here because it suggests that this is a behavior that she has engaged in before. Again, altogether, just a really clever and thought-provoking lyric. Then we get to the pre-chorus, which is really just one line. She says, "It's the hope that kills you." So here she's just conveying that she's come to believe that having hope that things could change actually brings her pain and suffering instead of comfort. When we have this sentiment, which is not uncommon at all when we're struggling with our mental health or going through a difficult situation that we genuinely can't see how we're going to get out of, it's often associated with something called learned helplessness, which is a psychological state where we believe that we have no control over our circumstances and are powerless to change them, which I think is what she's really getting at here. I also think that this line really highlights the broader theme of escapism in the song because if we believe that there is no hope, it's easier to justify avoiding reality and seeking refuge in our own delusions. But then we get to the chorus, which really drives this point home. She says, "So I close my eyes till it all fades. And so I close my eyes, then it all fades. Yet I'm still aching, breaking, trying again, but I'll just close my eyes till it all fades." Here we clearly see that she's pushing past just escapism and crossing over into true avoidance and also dissociation. The phrase "close my eyes" becomes this recurring motif or mantra even that to me symbolizes her desire to just kind of shut out the world and push away her negative emotions. But she's also admitting here that there is still a conflict, that doing this is not working at all. She's still suffering and engaging in the thoughts that cause this suffering. But she's still encouraging herself to keep trying because she doesn't want to face this truth. She wants to be able to live in her fantasy world because it's a lot less painful. We can see that there's a transition from escapism to avoidance and dissociation because she's saying that she's actively trying to distance herself from her emotions and her experiences. And I also think it's interesting that Pal talks about dissociation in more than one song on the album. In fact, she brings it up directly in Consume, which will be the next Warning song that I analyze. But it just shows that it's a theme that the band was thinking about a lot when they were writing the album, and I think the chorus beautifully expresses this theme. I also think their intentional decision to make the chorus sung lower instead of how you would typically make the chorus higher pitched was just really smart because it makes it seem even more dark and even more desperate. So as usual for the Warning, just a really effective choice. But moving on to the next verse, it starts with, stepping into the void, even if it amounts to nothing, silence is to avoid. I think these lines suggest a sense of emptiness or a lack of purpose. The protagonist almost seems to be deliberately seeking out a state of nothingness so she can block out her pain, like she's willing to accept meaninglessness as a trade-off for avoiding suffering. She'd rather numb herself than deal with reality. But the next part of the verse has a slightly different tone. She goes on to say, reaching out to hold on to something I wish I could enjoy. So here we see that she actually does long for human connection and that she wishes that she could have more positive experiences. I think her desire to hold on to something implies that she's searching for meaning or happiness in her life because she doesn't want to feel this way. So there's an inner conflict there. On one hand, she's drawn to escapism and avoidance, but on the other hand, she's also seeking connection and meaning. But I think it goes back to a more pessimistic tone with the next lines that say, worthless means of communicating, words that only destroy, leave me feeling, fearing, oh. This kind of just emphasizes her learned helplessness, maybe suggesting that when she does try to reach out, it just ends up making things worse because the communication just leads to more suffering and she can't tune out what they are saying. She wishes that she didn't have to have these emotions because it just leads to fear and anxiety for her. So it's like she's saying she can't win and that even trying is useless. But then we get to the amazing bridge in the song. She says, I can't help but feel. I can't tell what's real. It's the hope that kills you. I love this part. She's basically saying that she can't control her emotions, that they're still overcoming her. And she's saying that at this point, she can no longer even distinguish between reality and her own internal world, which really is one of the dangers of dissociation. And then she closes this part by repeating her belief that the problem here is hope, that she wishes she could just let go of her desire for things to change because that would make things better. She wants to just be able to accept this nothingness because her escapism isn't working out for her. She still secretly desires a different reality, and she thinks that it's hope that's really what's making the situation as painful as it is for her. Now the song ends with a repetition of the chorus and a final repeat of the lines, but I'll just close my eyes till it all fades, which I think is extremely powerful because it just reinforces all these heavy themes and creates this sense of urgency and desperation. I also think as a listener that it evokes a sense of empathy for the protagonist because we can all feel her pain and maybe even recognize similar patterns in our own lives. I think that line is particularly poignant because it suggests that she just feels like she's resigned to her fate and that there's never going to be an end to this. Of course, that's never really true, but we can certainly feel that way, and I think a lot of us do feel that way sometimes. And musically, I think the actual tone of the song just makes it even more moving and touching. I feel like this one really does cut deep. And again, I think lyrically, it's just so relatable. Not just because of the pandemic, but because of the state of the world right now and how isolated and disconnected we all feel. I think the song beautifully expresses our collective heartbreak, and even though for our survival, we have to believe that there is always hope, The fact that the song doesn't really resolve in a positive way makes it a little more real, because when we're going through this, we often don't feel like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So I do think it makes for a more dramatic ending to have her return to her pessimism, because I think it really resonates with a lot of people's own feelings right now, especially when our coping mechanisms are dissociation, escapism, and avoidance. So this song is almost like a cautionary tale telling us to feel our feelings and to work through them and even get support if we need it. But overall, I just feel like it's incredibly relevant and puts into words what a lot of us really are going through. I do have to say, however, that this was one of the tracks off Keep Me Fed that definitely grew on me. It was not initially one of my favorites, but now it absolutely is. I feel like I appreciate it more every single time that I listen to it. And like I said in the last video, I am really enjoying this new, very raw writing style that they are using. I think it made the whole album just a lot more authentic and honest, and it's almost like they are letting us a little deeper into their own little internal world. I also really like that Pau calls this the Halloween song. It makes me like it even more because it's my absolute favorite day of the year. And it makes me think, with October coming, that they may give us a Halloween themed video, which would be really fun, although I have absolutely no idea what song they are releasing next. So if you know, please let me know down below. But that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed the analysis. And of course, I can't wait to hear your thoughts and theories. And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe and let me know what you'd like me to cover next. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.